Welcome to Disability Empowerment Now Special Report. I'm here with Chris Desborough, and I'm your host, Keith Murphy DiConcini. Today we are talking about education under threat. Where do we go from here? I would like to welcome back my co-host, as always, Chris Desborough. Chris,
How you
why
doing,
don't
Keith?
you start us off with the big news of the last few weeks about the executive order that we all knew was coming, even though we wished and prayed it wouldn't come, and special education being assigned to the Health and Human Services Administration under RFK Jr.
Well, Keith, it's great to be with you. And as always, just before I launch into this incredibly important topic, I just want to add that anything I say is basically my opinion and my opinion only, and do not express the views of anyone that I work for, anybody that I'm collaborating with. These are my views and my views only. So with that out of the way, yeah. With the executive order signing, I think it was last week, basically directing Education Secretary Linda McMahon to start dismantling a Department of Education and send it back to the states. It's incredibly concerning. What I will say is, and I'm not here to, bash anybody. It's just literally let's be fair here. In his press conference prior to signing the executive order, he did say that Linda McMahon had asked to ensure that provisions were kept for kids with disabilities and all that kind of stuff. So that's great.
Yeah.
But now, as you said right there at the opening, it's now under the Department of Health and Human Services. We don't know what this is going to look like as far as sending this back to the states. What's it going to look like here in Arizona?
Yeah.
Who knows? And more importantly, what are going to be the checks and balances in place for enforcement of ensuring special education is delivered correctly?
Yeah,
Where's
they're
the
getting rid of the civil rights office, which is used to enforce special education.
I know. So it's that, and then obviously under special education, we've got IEPs. How is all this going to be enforced? And I wonder whether or not this issue, and I want to find a better example, but I can't. And I'm not trying to compare them. I'm just basically come up with an example. When a women's rights to choose and her reproductive rights, everything was sent back to the states, it then took initiatives to get stuff on the ballot for each state to vote to then decide whether or not a woman's right to choose was going to be codified into a state's constitution. I wonder whether or not, to a greater or lesser extent, we're going to see something similar, maybe, maybe not, when it comes to the protection of education and the protection of, special education, IEPs, and being able to enforce it. Because if you send it back to the states, and when the civil rights clauses are being removed and being able to enforce and stuff, what does that mean? At the minute, it's total confusion.
Yeah, yeah,
which is all we've
no,
seen since January 25th. Complete
yeah,
confusion.
no one knows what's going to happen here. And it's almost like they don't, and again, we're not trying to be partisan here at all. Uh, we just focus on the issues that affect our community and those around us. But it's like the executive orders and their impacts or potential impacts are not thought through. Like,
Mm.
I remember sending you a very long article about what dismantling the education department means for kids with disabilities. And then you have the Justice Department rescinding a lot of the COVID era mandates regarding access, uh, service animals, and the like. I mean, it, and their excuse was it incentivizes small business to really pick up the slack and make their businesses more accessible. And oh, we'll give them tax breaks to encourage them, like we've always done. And we've seen very mixed results. And it's like, oh, we're cutting back regulation and letting the free market decide all that jazz. I mean, all of these talking points, they come out of the same tired playbook that we've heard about for years and years and years.
I totally agree, and I think I think what is really alarming with all of this, and you touched on it there just a moment ago, is very much the fact that what we're doing is like, yeah, great, we're going to dismantle the Department of Education. Congratulations, well done. We'll have a signing ceremony. Look at me, I've not great. But it's a case of, oh, I've now delivered on my campaign promise, but it's this is what we're going to do. But now it's a case of how are we going to do it? You sign the executive order, they're laying off staff. Great. What's the next step? And
Yeah,
at the minute, there doesn't seem to be any plan, not just for this, but for everything else that he's been doing. And
yeah,
we'll focus just on the Department of Education right now. But what's the plan? You're dismantling it. That's great. You're sending it back to the states. That's great. How's it going to work? My question is the funding still, is there still going to be funding coming from the federal government? And if so, which departments are going to be administering the distribution and disbursement of those funds? How's that bit going to work? And
yeah,
it's just confusing.
yeah. No, it seems like they think that if we just send it back to the states will automatically know what to do to pick up the slack, to uh, administer funds. I mean, God forbid you try to do this with Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. It's just gonna be one clusterfuck after the other, and they can't fully dismantle an agency without Congress,
Congress.
without
Yeah.
congressional approval. And so, but again, just putting special education under health and human services, regardless of who is the head of health and human services, that opens up a huge minefield of perception of seeing disability in kids with disabilities, especially as just some sort of health concern. I mean, special education has never, never in the history of this country, as far as my research will tell me, has been under the Office of Health and Human Services. And there are good reasons for that. I mean, health and human services and education are two vastly different areas.
No, absolutely, and I think this kind of plays into some other stuff as well, in which the Secretary of Health and Human Services you mentioned earlier, RFK Jr. He's got some very interesting ideas. We've seen plenty of interviews with him over this past election cycle, in which he's like, well, autism and ADHD didn't exist when I was a kid, so it's got to be something to do with the food. It's got to be something to do with this, something to do with that. And it's the thought and it's the notion that disability is be different. Disability is, how can I put it? Health and Human Services, and what we're getting from Health and Human Services and the Oval Office and other officials is, don't be different. You can't be different. It
Yeah,
goes back to what we talked about a couple of episodes ago with eugenics and everything else. You can't be different. You're not allowed to be different. And anybody that doesn't fit into whatever is crafted as normal at the moment is different, and therefore we're going to cast you to one side. And that tends to be the narrative, I feel, with disability when it comes out of health and human services. And if we're going to apply that lens to kids who all they want to do is learn,
yeah,
be included, and be active and be profitable and be functioning and contributing members of society, which everybody has the right to be and to do, it's, I tell you what, there are alarm bells ringing all over the place, especially for members of our population, the disabled population, and the kids coming up. They're already behind the eight ball because there's a lot of negative stereotypes. People don't know, schools don't necessarily do things the right way. Everything. We all these negative narratives, and now those narratives are coming down from the federal government. And God help our kids coming through. God
I
help our kids, and God help the kids with disabilities, because they are, what is ahead of them as a generation is even more bleak than what lays ahead of you and I.
Yeah, and it's like we're going to have to return to this subject in another episode because, like you said, there's not a lot of specifics right now. There's more confusion than anything else. I mean, if any agency, but let's continue with Health and Human Services, regardless of who's in charge, if the agency had a plan to effectively take on special education, that would be one thing. But to my knowledge, they don't. It's like folding the EPA into the Department of Defense or the Department of Housing into the Department of Energy. I mean,
it's bonkers. It's to your point. What I don't get it again, and I don't want to sound as though I'm repeating myself, but it's a case of promises made, promises kept, promises made. Fantastic. Well, I've signed a piece of paper, an executive order has been signed. Look at that, keeping my promises. But the devil's in the detail, and there isn't any. It's a case of I'm just going to dismantle this. I'm going to, tear this down. And now that all the pieces are on the floor, now you've got to figure out how you're going to rebuild it and make it work. But I've done my bit. I signed the executive order, and it's chaos. It's utter chaos. And when you're playing, especially with the lives of our kids, our future generations and their education, and those kids and those future leaders and kids, again, who have disabilities, you can't come in like a hurricane, like a tornado, tear the place up and have no plan to rebuild. But at the minute, we're still waiting for plans to, the tornado has made landfall and it's doing its damage. How are we going to rebuild? There's no plan. And I think, like a bunch of the other executive orders, this is not only good. Well, it's going to be litigated in the courts. That's pretty much a given. But to dismantle and get rid of these departments, and again, with the Department of Education, that's going to have to take an act of, my understanding is, it's going to have to take an act of Congress.
Yeah.
So it's just complete chaos. And then it's a case of litigate it in the courts and then see whether or not Congress is going to sign off on it. Now, I'm not a politician, but to me, that doesn't seem like a particularly sensible plan for anything.
No, I mean, the only one bright spot I'd see is that they're going to have so many executive orders, so many half-actioned or ideas out there that they're not gonna even be able to keep up with what they do. I mean, we speak about promises made, promises kept. How much does a carton of eggs cost? How much are your groceries? Wasn't that the default main promise that our president made, that on day one he was gonna bring prices down? I mean,
It's interesting. It's interesting you should say that. I saw a quote from a senator, junior senator for Arizona, Ruben Gallego, and I thought it was genius. He stated on one of his social media platforms, when Donald Trump was sworn in and he promised to bring prices down, I thought he meant the cost of living, not stock prices.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, that is bloody brilliant. Uh, it's just, there's so much and too much to unpack in just one single episode, even if we made it 3 hours long, which, spoiler alert, we never will. But I mean, it, because what's the point? It's just us spinning our wheels right now, trying to guesstimate at what is happening. I
mhm,
mean, the only thing we know for sure, confusion, confusion, confusion. And there doesn't seem to be a lot of follow through. And yeah, we're only barely 2 months in, but it
it's
feels a
exhausting.
lot longer. And I mean, predict the leaders of tomorrow are students. Already, both those with and without disabilities already took massive hits to their educational quality during COVID, where everyone had to go home, switch to online learning like it had always been a part of our lives when it hadn't, except if you were in grad school already. I mean, how much more can we throw at students,
You're
no
absolutely
matter
right.
the grade, and expect them to evolve into capable leaders of the next generation?
Yeah.
It goes way beyond politics, way beyond states' rights. I mean, it's just, and you don't have to think back too
No,
many
yeah.
years to really remember what it was like.
Well, that's right, because it was 5 years ago. Right now, we were in lockdown. It was only
Yeah,
5 years. And, 5 years sounds like it's a
half a
long time, but
decade, half a decade, people, not half a century, half
uh,
of 10 years, half a decade.
that's right. And also, as well, if you talk to everybody who lived through it, I don't know about you, it doesn't feel like 5 years ago. It only seems like a few weeks ago that all that
Yeah,
happened. But to your point with the pandemic, yeah, we everybody came home, everybody had to do online learning. But what we have seen as we've come out of the pandemic, that not only have our students and our kids suffered, our high school kids, or kids K through 12, not only was their learning impacted, but look at kids who are on IEPs, who are special needs, who do need a little, extra help. They're going to be even further behind the eight ball than they were to start with. They're further behind the eight ball because of their cohorts, they're further behind the eight ball than their cohorts. And now what we're doing is not only basically saying, you know what, you had to transition to learning at home and you were struggling. We're now creating an environment again. The tornadoes touch ground, chaos everywhere. kids, especially kids with disabilities who struggle, they're going to struggle even more. And what we're doing with this is basically creating almost like a two-tier education system.
Yeah.
You got those that will be able to get by, and those, especially kids with disabilities, and we know from the data, and the data exists, and it's not a case of fake news, it's credible data that one of the most impacted minorities during COVID were people with disabilities, were kids with disabilities, and the disability community. So what we're doing now is creating complete chaos, and we're basically sweeping these kids away to one side because we don't know how education is going to run in this country as it is, let alone how kids with disabilities and kids who are on IEPs, how they're going to fit into this system.
And and to
Marginalising them
break
further.
and to shed some light on just how huge that group of kids is, let me read a paragraph from the Vox article I mentioned before. That's a huge group of kids. As of 2022 to 2023, 7.5 million students, 15% of all those enrolled in public school received special education or related services like speech therapy under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. The most common reasons for specific learning disabilities like dyslexia.
It's, you know, I'm going to be a cynic for a moment, but those 7 point whatever million kids that we were talking about,
7.5.
7.7.5 million kids. Guess what? Those 7.5 million kids, they will grow up to be voters. They will have the ability to vote when they turn 18, and I'm sure, I'm sure a lot of those kids will end up having very long memories over their experiences in school or their lack of experiences in school, the lack of inclusivity, and the fact that they were left
Behind.
behind. They'll remember that when they become
Yes.
voters. They'll remember that. Now, granted, the individual who's in the Oval Office right now will be long gone, but that's not the point. It will leave a taste in their mouth, and those 7.5 million kids will become voters and they will vote accordingly. And, if people want to be cynical about it, I'm being cynical about it. Even if you don't give a shit about those kids, give a shit about the fact that they will actually turn out to be voters. And maybe, just maybe, you may want to start thinking about looking after those future voters as well, because they will vote accordingly. They will vote by their experiences and how they were treated, and they will remember.
Yeah, I mean, we can only hope. I mean, I would love to hear more specifics on, I mean, the Department of Education has been around for decades. It's one thing to just sign a executive order and let things devolve into chaos. It would be another thing entirely to sign a executive order and put out some sort of plan. to navigate through this time of transition. But that's not what this current administration does. Uh, I mean, again, states are not prepared. They may want to control more of their education, but
the devil's in the detail.
Yeah,
The
the
devil is
devil's
in the detail.
in the details, and I don't think. I wish more and more people would understand that, like, nothing is unfortunately gonna go smoothly with that because everyone's scrambling like chickens with their heads cut off, to use a very odd analogy. But it's like, and the confusion is the axe again. Very weird analogy.
No, I totally agree. And I think, and I'm going to make this statement, I don't want to take us off course. I don't want to, go on a tangent, but I think it's important that, yes, the devil is in the detail, but a large proportion of the voting population in this country, they'll listen to a soundbite and go, great idea. Well, that's great. But we're at a place in politics right now, and this is both on the left and right. Everybody will tell you that this guy's worse than the other guy, that gal's worse than the other girl, and we're going to do it better. We're race to the bottom. Whose version of America is worse than the other person's, and we're gonna improve it. Well, that's great. How? Nobody tells us how on either side. Tell us how. You want to tell me that you want to tell me that you're better than that person? Great. Show me why. And I think that's why we are where we are now. Voters, listen to sound bites. Great idea. A lot of the voting population aren't inquisitive enough to go, great, show me the receipts, show me the devil of the detail, show me how it's going to happen before they go to the polls. They've gone to the polls, the country have voted, this is where we are, we're in chaos, we're in complete confusion. Department of Education is being, dismantled along with other parts of government. Kids with disabilities are going to get completely screwed, as they always do.
Yeah.
But promises made, promises kept. But that's not the way we should be approaching this on either side of the aisle. You want to do something, tell me you're going to do it and show me how you're going to do it and give me a plan before I vote. Don't then basically revert back to the War of Independence. Why do we have a War of Independence? We wanted to get rid of a monarchy.
Yeah.
Now we're just signing our way through a presidential term in executive orders. It's reverting back to what we had a War of Independence over, and the most marginalized groups in this country, kids with disabilities and other populations, are going to be the ones that bear the brunt of it. And
we always
do that.
Yeah, we always do. Everyone in the community knows that we have a long history of seeing our rights trampled. And again, it's just like if the states were prepared for that, that would be one thing. Oh, that would be a lot of, I think, knowing that the states were prepared to take this on. And this is a massive seismic change in our entire country.
No,
None of
absolutely.
the states are ready to take this on. If they were, I think we would all feel better. But again, no state has come out and said, yes, this is what we want, and we're responsible enough to take over
I
for
don't,
all our kids in all of our schools in our state.
and I think it goes back to your point, the states aren't ready for this. We're not. The states are not ready for it. And you're going to just, to me, it's like building a house, right? You're building a house and you got the frame up, and then all of a sudden you get a phone call and somebody says, yeah, I'm going to come and stay and I'm going to be with you in 4 hours and I want dinner, I want a place to stay. You're not ready for it. You can't accommodate that person because you're in the middle of building a house, you've only got the frame up. And right now, there's no state, to your point, that is able to go, yeah, we'll take over from here. And no states have come out because they're probably still trying to get to the bottom of what it is or how it's going to work to be able to somehow piece together how it can work in each individual state. But I don't even think, and I could be wrong, and if I'm wrong, I'm happy to come on here and apologize and say that I'm wrong. But I don't even think Health and Human Services or even Linda McMahon has the guidelines or the blueprint to send to the states and go, and this is how it's going to work. I don't even think they've got that yet. So the states probably can't come out and go, yeah, we're ready, because they don't even know what the details are. And the people doing it probably don't even have the guidelines and details themselves in place to be able to hand out to the states. So it's a complete mess.
Once again, there's a lot more confusion in what ifs than there are details about how that it's gonna play out. And if you think that states can take on education for all of the families in their states without a concept of a plan, what happens when this administration, God forbid, tries to kick back Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, supplemental incomes back to the states? You don't give anyone any lead up to this to develop infrastructure to be able to handle these rights. And again, and let's end on a lovely hypothetical scenario. Okay, let's say the states have all the rights now and they control everything. And every state does things differently. What's the purpose of the federal government then? And what is the purpose of the office of the president then? Because
It does make you wonder.
if you give every right back to every state, which there's a reason why this hasn't been attempted by any other president. I
I
mean,
know.
again, the chaos and confusion, I don't know which is more worse than the other. And I mean, that's not a very cheery scenario to end a episode on, but I mean, it's just. What do you think?
I think you're absolutely right. And a point that you touched on there, infrastructure. What if the states have the infrastructure? That's one thing. Say, for example, the states had all the infrastructure designed in order to do this. Okay, fine. Put that to one side. What about at federal level? Where's the infrastructure at federal level to be able to say, right, we're chopping the Department of Education and we're now rolling into Health and Human Services? You basically, you, you almost, it's like a merger, right? You merge corporations. It doesn't happen overnight. And there's growing pains and there's teething issues. And then you've got to work out the hierarchy. You've got to work out the structure. You've got to work out how, do you have to redesign the workflow and the processes and everything else? That doesn't happen overnight. But we're doing this, we're gambling with our kids' futures.
Yeah,
We're gambling with our kids' futures by taking these steps and by making these moves. And to your point, if you decentralize absolutely everything, now that may happen, it may not. Certainly, the indication is at the moment that we're kind of heading towards, decentralization of government. So if you decentralize the government, great. To your point, then why have we got a president? No
yeah,
problem. We'll get rid of the president. And I'll tell you what, we'll get rid of everybody in the United States Congress because why do we have to pay
yeah,
taxes to
yeah.
them in a job in which everything's be decentralized?
It
It's
seems
incredibly
like
worrying.
no one really thinks about these things in government. It shouldn't it shouldn't come out from a non political citizen. Uh, what am I saying? Non political. Any citizen. It's like, it's so simple to go there. It didn't take any grand concoction to dream up that scenario.
No.
It's like there's a reason why the US government has functioned, for better or for worse, as a centralized structure since the beginning, in one form or another, of our since our founding. And there's so much more we could talk about or get to, but we have to leave it there. Thank you so much for listening, and for you, Chris, for coming on and talking to me about these issues. These issues will keep coming up in future episodes because confusion and chaos, that's all we have right now. And
Agreed.
it's
There's a
Yeah.
lot coming. There's a lot coming down the pipe still, and we'll reconvene at another time. But it was great to be with you, and let's really keep our fingers crossed that Linda McMahon's statement, Secretary McMahon's statement, that she wants to protect kids with disabilities. Let's hope that actually rings true because God help our youth and God help our kids with disabilities at the moment. But it's good to be with you, and we'll get after it another time.
Take care of yourself, my friend.
You too, Keith.